Hi, third grade Falcons. This is Miss Land, and I am here to give you a video about equivalent fractions. You may have watched Mrs. Shill's video last week on basic fractions, just kind of reviewing what the numerator is and what it represents or stands for, and what the denominator is and what that stands for. If you're still not certain or not sure about those, I really encourage you to go back and re-watch that video. If you feel like you have a good understanding of what a fraction is and what each number means, then you are ready for the equivalent fractions, which is what we're going to be working on this week. And I hope this video will help you recognize what that looks like. So first off, I'm going to tell you what exactly does equivalent fractions mean. So an equivalent fraction is different fractions that have the same value. So different fractions, they've got different numerators, different denominators, but actually when you look at them, they have the same amount. They're actually talking about the same amount, even though they're using different numbers. So think of equivalent as equal. It kind of has that same beginning, that same root. Equivalent means that the two fractions are equal. In your packets and in your online instruction, you will see a paper or an anchor chart that is just like what you see on your screen now. This anchor chart is something that you can refer to. I'm going to go over the different ways that we can model equivalent fractions in this video, and you can refer to this paper to kind of give you a reminder to check those different ways that we might see it represented. So one way that we would see equivalent fractions, or that we can make to check equivalent fractions, is by using a model. And a model can be any different shape. For example, on this screen, we have two rectangles that we can use to compare the different fractions. We also have three circles that are used. The important thing is that the two models that you're using are the same size, and that you're cutting up your fractions as accurately as possible. Because in order to have a fraction, you'll remember from last week's video, the parts have to be equal. So in this first example over here, we see that 2/3, this fraction is 2 orange pieces and 3 altogether. 2/3 is actually, see that? Is actually equivalent to 4/6, because they have the same amount of orange. So even though this one has 2 pieces and this one has 4 pieces, they are equivalent because they fill the same amount of the shape. So understanding that equivalent fractions don't have to have the same number of pieces and won't be cut up the same number of times. We can look down here also at our circles, and we see 3 different circles that all have one side of the circle is filled with color. When we look at it though, they've been cut up into different pieces. This first, I like to think of it as pizzas, right? This first pizza is only cut up into 2 pieces. So 1/2 is shaded in. This next one, it's been cut into 6 pieces total, and 3 of those 6 pieces are colored in. But do you see how the amount of space here matches the amount of space here and matches the amount of space here? We can see that the same amount of the pizzas are colored in. So if I was to buy a pizza for 3 of my friends, and let's say this blue pizza Ben got, and I gave Ben only 1 piece of this pizza. And the next pizza I take over and I give to Jaden, and I give Jaden 3 pieces of pizza. And the next pizza I take over and I give to Chanel, and Chanel gets 4 pieces of pizza. Right? If they're cut up like this, they all actually got an equivalent amount. It was just cut differently. So being able to look and take out those lines and just focus in on the amount that's shaded in is what you're going to need to do when comparing those models. Now, there's one thing I have to warn you about, though, and that's the way that the pictures might show up. Sometimes, to try and trick you, the tests will flip the pictures. So you can see on this example that one of the models has been flipped. So they are still equivalent. These are still equal. It's just that they've taken this first circle. Not only did they cut it up, but this part that's shaded has been flipped over. So you have to be able to look at the space, the amount of space, and it may have to be shifted in order to make that match. So be aware of that. It's not always going to be shaded in the exact same spot. That's one way that they trick our third graders, so be cautious. Another way that we can check our fractions to see if they're equivalent is they may give you a fraction bar. And I can see that right here, these two fraction bars line up. So I can see that 1/2 is equal to 2/4. 1/2 is equal or equivalent to 2/4. And I can see that because they line up and those pieces fill up to the same spot. 1/2, 2/4, right? So we can use that fraction bars to find multiple sets of equivalent fractions. And I know Ms. Shields also include a set of fraction bars in your packet as well. I know it was in the first week 3 packet, and it may also be in your week 4 packet, but you can utilize that to line up those fractions to see if they line up in the same place. So that's one good tool. And the third strategy or tool that you may use or they may be expected for you to check fractions on is fraction number lines. So again, like the fraction bars, your fraction number lines would need to be lined up in order to show that they are equivalent. It would be where they line up. So these ones all line up. They're stacked right on top of each other. So I can tell by looking at these fraction lines that 1/2, 3/6, and 4/8 are all equal or equivalent, right? Those are the same words, equal and equivalent, because they line up. There's no other fractions that line up. See how this one is a little bit over from 1/8. This one is a little bit short of 3/8. None of the other fractions besides, actually, I may have spoken too soon, my 1/2s all line up, and that should always be the case. In order to do this, if you were to be creating the number lines, you want to make sure your zeros all line up to the same spot and your wholes line up to the same spot. Just because a pizza has 8 slices doesn't make it bigger than another pizza that has 6 slices. They can still, the whole pizza is the same size. Okay, so being able to look at fraction number lines and lining them up confirms whether they are equivalent or not. All right, our last and probably our most popular way to check that fractions are equivalent is actually not a visual way to picture them, but is by using what we called fireworks this year, or your teacher may have referred to it as a butterfly, right? And we start off at the bottom, and if you're doing fireworks, the fireworks fly up across into the sky, right? And that forms a multiplication sign. So that hopefully will help remind you that as you're going up, you're actually multiplying across to the numerator on the other side. So here's an example of that. The 6 goes across and multiplies with the 3, giving this side an 18. This 8 shoots up and multiplies with the 2. That gives this side a 16. So are these fractions equivalent? They are not, right? Because on this side, 3/8, we had 18. And on this side, 2/6, we had 16. 18 and 16 are not equal. So these fractions are not equivalent. So you can use your fireworks. Remember, they go up from the ground and up across into the sky. And you put those numbers right on top of the number that you multiplied to give you your final number. And then you can compare those numbers. Okay. So you have learned to use fireworks, number lines, fraction bars, and models to check your equivalent fractions. So hopefully all of those areas make sense. Remember, you can watch this video as many times or even a chunk of the video that you need to. But basically, equivalent fractions, you're looking to see, is it the same amount? Does it get me the same spot on a number line? Does it get me to fill up the same area of a shape? And of course, you can use those fireworks to check it out. If you have any questions, remember you can always reach out to your teacher. You can go back and watch this video or the basic fractions video again as well. And let us know if you have any questions. I know we're all eager to help you and get you going on these equivalent fractions. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed my video.